More than ever, technology has proven to be a lifesaver given the global pandemic and other circumstances that we now face across the globe. We will talk with an artificial intelligence or AI data scientist to learn how voice technology shapes how we communicate and get our messages out to consumers. Let's get into it. Today, my guest is Carl Robinson, the co-founder and CEO of Rumble Studio. This software company helps companies create podcasts for marketing using cutting-edge voice technology. Carl is also the host of Voice Tech Podcast and has interviewed more than 100 experts in voice technology. Carl's ambition is to democratize audio content creation so that businesses large and small can establish a presence on the audio channels of the future. Thank you for agreeing to come on Making Sense of Multimedia, Carl.
Daniel, it's great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really do appreciate it. We're in different time zones, and sometimes that can be a little trying, I guess, to coordinate things.
Indeed.
So I want to start backwards, Carl. And backwards by, I mean, you did say in my research about living abroad had some challenges. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
So living abroad, it does have a lot of challenges. I suppose it depends where you are. I've spent more than the last 10 years out of my home country now. So I'm from the UK, so you could probably tell. In 2009, I moved to China, lived in Beijing. And then after that, after 7 years there, I moved to France. So I've been spending a lot of time abroad. Obviously, language is the biggest challenge when you first arrive, at least. And certainly in China, I was heavily reliant on the friends that I knew out there who could speak Chinese. The culture as well, to get used to the different way of doing things, the way people interact, how to get things done in your day-to-day life. Both China and France have interesting bureaucracies, I should say. It can be quite slow to get things done in both countries compared to the UK. And just establishing a life, really, just avoiding loneliness, moving your life forwards, meeting friends, relationships, these kinds of things. There's a lot of challenges to living in a foreign country, but it's very rewarding. I definitely don't regret it for a second, and it's brought me a great many benefits in my life, and I highly recommend it.
So you're in Paris now.
I am indeed, yeah.
And so what made you choose Paris over any other country or going back to the UK? I'm certainly no stranger of relocation, as we talked about off mic a second ago. I recently relocated, although I'm still in the US, but relocating to an area that you're not familiar with can be some challenges. So that's why I want to start backwards. Why did you select Paris?
Well, it was the obvious choice, really, because when we were in China, we were deciding where to go next. It was time to leave Asia and come back to Europe, and really the two choices were the UK or France. Because my girlfriend at the time is from France. Sorry, she is French. She's now my wife, and so we were looking for somewhere where I could actually continue my studies. I wanted to get back into technology. I did a computer science bachelor's degree way back when. I graduated in 2004, I think it was. But I wanted to get back into the tech, certainly the AI stuff. So I was looking for where I could do a master's degree. And France has fantastic universities, as I'm sure everyone knows. And it's also a lot cheaper than the UK. So that was one factor. The other was that obviously my wife was from Paris, so she had all her family here, and we were looking to start a family. So there was a practical element on that side of things as well. And lastly, France is just a nice place to live. You know, I've visited many times, in my life, and I definitely wasn't against moving here. And it was a way for me to continue the adventure. Having done that experience in China, I still wanted to live abroad and experience different cultures. I wasn't quite ready to go back to the UK, and maybe never will be. So France was the good choice, and I'm happy with that choice.
I've never been to France. The only place in Europe that I've been was Spain, and I really loved Spain when I was
Oh,
there.
nice.
Spent a few days there.
Yeah, Spain's lovely. Actually, my brother's just moved to Spain, so I visited for the first time just a couple of months ago, actually, and it's beautiful. We were picking the oranges off the orange trees, which they have a lot of in Spain, and yeah, it was great.
You mentioned you took some courses in AI, and certainly you did mention the education would be a lot less expensive in France than the UK. Certainly a lot less expensive than here in the US, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Why AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I could see that it was the next big phase in computing. I've always had a career, or at least my more recent career has always been in startups and technology. And, I'm always looking to the next big thing, where the innovation is happening. How can we create the next generation of products? And for sure, AI was and still is really like the driving force in computer science today. I was working at a startup in Beijing that was using like a chatbot style interface. Essentially, it was an app that we were building that helped doctors and health coaches speak to people with diabetes and convince them or coach them to eat better and lead more healthy lifestyles. And actually, the conclusion that we reached, having built that product, which was a kind of a human to human kind of chat experience, was that it would be fantastic and much more effective if we could actually automate it with some kind of voice technology. So I got turned on to voice technology and the whole idea of chatbots through that startup. And there was a lot happening in conversational AI around, we saw Alexa at the time, Amazon Alexa, and these type of conversational assistants really taking off and getting a lot of attention and investment. And so I really wanted to work in a field that involved conversational AI to some degree, and I thought the best way to do that was to really understand it at its roots, and studying computer science and AI specifically seemed like a good way to do that, as well as integrate into a new country, learn the language, etc. So there were many reasons why I wanted to go back to school, but that's primarily the reason I wanted to learn AI.
My background is in technology. I was a technology director for a number of years.
Okay.
Now, since I've started doing photography and videography work, I've talked to a lot of folks, especially photographers, that tell me AI stinks, I hate it, it's going to take over the world. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand it. I think they should embrace technology. It's certainly there. If you look at the software, especially with Adobe, because a lot of photographers use the Adobe suites. I use Photoshop and Lightroom, and their AI technology is called Sensei. And I have to tell you that embracing that technology, me personally, not only is it saving me time, but it's saving me a lot of money, because all of these different apps that I had to use to accomplish the same thing, I don't have to do that anymore. So when you embraced artificial intelligence, how long ago was that? When did you first get into that? What year?
I think I left China in 2016. So that was when I was really thinking a lot about it. Yeah.
Okay. So that brings us up now to talking about some other topics that I know you're excited talking about. Let's start with audio marketing. What's the story on that?
Audio marketing, yeah. So it really stems from the conversational interfaces and seeing all the different ways that people are using voice-enabled devices now. But then it bleeds over into podcasting and audio content. And my story essentially was, as I was saying, I was working first with chatbots. Then I studied AI and actually did an internship at a research center in France called IRCAM, where I was building machine learning models to change the emotion in the voice. And I was working, pretty much alone most of the time. That's what interns do in the lab. And at the same time, I started a podcast called the Voice Tech Podcast, which is all about smart speakers, conversational AI, and really it gave me an opportunity to speak to lots of interesting people. As I'm sure you found yourself, it's just an amazing tool to get to have great conversations and then also boost your profile. And it made me realize just how many companies in the conversational AI space wanted to be on a podcast, right? And the fact that they'd be prepared to speak to me, who, I'd gone back to school. I wasn't young, but I was, I didn't have any authority in the domain at all. And yet these people were willing to spend an hour or more on the call with me and talk at length about the technology and their products. So I saw there was a real demand from companies to want to promote themselves through audio. I could see podcasts were really booming, like just the number of podcasts being produced, the amount of podcast listening, especially in the US, was really going through the roof. And I was talking all about conversational interfaces and how, these things are going to transform the way we interact with computers. And of course, the thought occurred to me somewhere along the line that maybe I could put these two things together.
Yeah, let me jump in here for a second.
Sure.
You mentioned a couple of times conversational, I guess conversational AI or conversational. Explain that a little bit.
You mean what is conversational AI?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it's a collection of different technologies that enable machines to listen to what people say, so to actually capture the words that people are saying and convert the audio that they record into text. That's one technology, often called speech to text. And then another technology would be natural language understanding. So for the machine to actually understand at some level what the human actually meant, the intent behind what they sent. Maybe they wanted to do something or get something from the machine. Maybe they were expressing a certain thought, certain set of concepts or ideas, or even an emotion in their voice. So the ability to extract that and represent that in a structured way. And then also the ability to generate responses in text, first of all, and I'm sure your listeners have heard of models like GPT-3, which can generate these realistic phrases. And then finally, to be able to take those written phrases that it's generated and convert them into audio speech. So text-to-speech or synthetic speech is another technology. And so if you put all of those four technologies, plus many other technologies exist as well, like emotion detection and voice transformation, all of these other things. If you put all those together, I would group all of that under conversational AI, because they all use AI models or machine learning models at their core to operate. And put together, they form something greater than the sum of their parts. Like you can create these systems like Amazon Alexa that can actually listen to what you're saying, understand it, come up with a response, and then speak it back to you. And that's what I see as an AI system. Yeah.
We can't see each other, but I have this big grin on my face because when I moved here into the new house, I told myself I want to make this house smart. So I'm vested into the Apple ecosystem.
Okay.
And no, Apple's not paying me to say that, but I had a few friends that came over to see the new house, and they said, well, your house is smarter than you are. So,
that's nice.
So that all ties in, and that's why when you were mentioning Alexa and all of that, of course, since I'm, on the Apple platform, it's with Siri, and sometimes she can be a little unruly, but
oh yeah,
I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, they're not perfect. None of the platforms are perfect, really. I've got the Google set up in my home, listening to everything I say, and it gets things wrong on a daily basis. It can be quite infuriating at times.
Right.
Yeah.
You also talked about how AI and interactive voice technology will disrupt audio content creation. Because I'm really curious about what that disruption will be.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, like I was saying, when I was doing the podcast talking all about conversational AI, it occurred to me that, a lot of the questions I was asking on the podcast, I would ask the same. You know, I was asking them multiple times, and there were certain things in the podcast I was just doing again and again with every guest. Often, you know, I was tackling the same topics. You know, there was a similar structure to the show, and because I was talking about conversational AI, I just thought, well, maybe a machine could do some of what I'm doing, right? And maybe I was a little bit over optimistic or a little bit naive, because, you know, what we do as podcast hosts is actually very complicated for a machine to do. But that inspired me anyway, to be able to, the idea of getting a machine to be able to do what I was doing, like on the mic, interviewing these people, and then maybe perhaps turning that into a product that could actually help businesses market themselves through audio. And so yeah, this is the root of the idea that led me to start my business, which is what is today Rumble Studio.
Right, and we're going to talk about Rumble Studio in a minute, because when I looked at your links that you sent to me and looked at all the information, I said, this is kind of interesting here. I want to know more about that, especially now, like I said at the top of the show, with the pandemic that hopefully is easing now across the globe. But there's still a lot of folks that still doing remote work, and there's a lot of folks that just don't want to go back into the office now. So I can see this technology, and especially how you have it set, or how it works, where you don't actually have to be on site. And I stumble a little bit because a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, I was doing some video work, and I wanted to interview a president of a college in Boston, and she just did not want to be on the telephone. She didn't want to do anything with that. So I know I'm jumping around, but I'm going to jump right into Rumble Studio. I think Rumble Studio would have been perfect for her, because you explain it. You can explain it better than I can say it.
Yeah, sure. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that this guest didn't feel comfortable on the mic? Is that right? Like too shy, too self-conscious, or was there something else?
She was. Her assistant said she really does not like to be on the microphone. She was happy to do a telephone interview, but at the time, this was maybe 2.5 years ago, and at the time I was using Skype, and we all know Skype's audio is not the best in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Zoom wasn't a thing at that time, at least not that I knew of. So I think something like Rumble Studio would have made her more. I ended up not getting that interview for that little short documentary. Yeah. But I think Rumble Studio would have been something perfect for that. So instead of me following my script here, let's talk about Rumble Studio now.
Sure. Well, it's in a nutshell, Rumble Studio is a SaaS platform, a software as a service, that helps companies, agencies, individual podcasters grow their brand or their online presence using audio. And it's an online tool that you can use to conduct remote guest interviews, like we're doing now. We're using Riverside today. Right. There are many tools that offer remote guest interviews. But the unique part of Rumble Studio is our interviews are asynchronous. So they're not live interviews like we're doing now, but rather you would add some questions into our system. You send an invitation to your guest or guests. It can be as many people as you like. And then the guest, in their own time, answers those questions, records their voice, and is taken through a structured interview by the machine itself, by Rumble Studio. And then after they've recorded, the creator can go back in, retrieve that audio, and manipulate it, add some of their own audio, jingles, reorder, export, and produce a podcast episode or any other kind of audio in order to publish that.
What are some of the use cases for that? Because mine was a perfect one, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. So there's so many advantages to doing things asynchronously, and some disadvantages. I'm not going to pretend that it solves everything without causing some other problems as well. So it's one of the tools that audio creators can have in their toolbox. You mentioned one, which is that it reduces the pressure for the guest, because often when you're a podcast guest, you're really put on the spot. The host will say, ask you a question. You're like, well, that's a big question. I'm not really sure how to answer that one. But you're live, right? So you've got to say something, and that really stresses people out and puts a lot of people off even agreeing to be on a podcast. So I think that's a shame, because obviously there's a lot of people out there with something interesting to say, and you don't want the pressure of the environment putting them off. And also, it's not just the pressure, but it's also the fact that you haven't really had time to think about what you're going to say. So often you blurt something out without really thinking about how you're going to structure it or all the points you want to make. So one of the advantages with asynchronous interviews is that the guest can think about what they're going to say beforehand, and therefore the answers are better informed. Now this could be sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with you, because in this same video segment, and I interviewed another CEO. I guess I can say it. It doesn't matter. She's not the CEO anymore of Campbell's Soup Company here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And her assistant wanted to see the questions that were going to be asked ahead of time, which is not unusual.
Well,
but
the bigger the company, the more I think that happens. We've certainly come across that, and there are some industries that are very sensitive, like the medical industry, for example, where there's a lot of liability, and they're very scared of saying anything that they could be, taken to court for example, or that might mislead people. So that in those environments, reviewing things in multiple stages and getting all the stakeholders to see what's going to happen, and then also review the content after it's been produced is something we've seen a number of times. Right. Again, in my use case, that would have been perfect, because she would have had an opportunity to formulate her responses, instead of me standing there, even though she had the questions and I'm asking those questions. A couple of times we had to do a couple of takes because she just wasn't comfortable with what she said at the time. So talk about some other use cases for this, because to me, this is exciting. Yeah, absolutely. So the use cases we're focused on are for companies. It's really creating a branded podcast so they can represent themselves, represent their brand on the audio channels of tomorrow. And that can be traditional podcasts, but it could also be voice interfaces. It can also be audio on their websites. There's an audio FAQ, for example. So there's lots of ways companies can use audio for marketing. It can be internal communications as well. So bigger companies, big groups often have tens of thousands of employees, and producing a podcast for consumption internally can be a great way to keep everyone up to date. It can also be really good for sales enablement. So if big companies are releasing new products, they need to get everyone in the company up to speed on what the product is, how to use it, why you should sell it, in terms of, the salespeople, how to sell it, what the pricing is going to be like. So there's lots of reasons to create an internal podcast, but not everyone in the company is an audio production expert. And so an end-to-end solution like Rumble Studio can be used for that. It's designed to be used by people who don't have any experience producing audio. And it also, because of the asynchronous nature of the interviews, allows for that step-by-step process of construction with all the reviews in between as well, that the managers need to have a look at things before it moves forward. So there's that. There's also things like client testimonial gathering, for example, or any use case where you would want to ask the same questions to multiple people. And this is something that's great about doing things on a SaaS like Rumble, is that you can write a set of questions. For example, client testimonials. You might want to ask, what did you like about the product? Why did you like those things, or what were you not so keen on? What would you improve? And maybe you want to send those questions to 100 customers and capture their audio, so you can really hear the emotion in their voice. So you can really learn, what it is that they were happy about and not so happy about your product. You can just put those into an interview. You get a single public link, or I say public, you get a single shareable link that you can share with people privately, or you could even make it public, put it on your website, put it even on social media. I say client testimonials. You could do the same thing for social media engagement, for example. So you could, as an influencer, can create a single question on Rumble and say, what do you think about my, I don't know, my new initiative that, I launched last week, the videos that I put out last week. What do you guys think of that? I'd love to hear your comments, and click this link that I've put out on social media. And then your fans can click it, they can record their answers. And that influencer can go in, listen to the audio, read the transcripts as well, because we have that, and then pick the best bits from their fan base and republish that out, not only as a podcast, but back out as videos onto social media. And I'm really excited about that loop, that creator or that community engagement that it can create, and then the repurposing of that content to put it back out to the community. So you're showing them that you are listening and that you do care.
You answered a question that I didn't ask you.
All right.
And I'm glad you went on. In the use cases, a lot of photographers listen to this podcast, and videographers, and hopefully other folks. And so I was sitting here as you were talking, I'm saying, well, what would be a use case for a photographer? Testimonials. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, testimonials. Because in the photography business, word of mouth is huge.
Yes.
And so I can see a great use case for photographers for Rumble Studio with just testimonials and social media. Let me ask you this. Are you familiar with a service called SpeakPipe? I
am, yes. And some of the people I speak to in the podcasting world do use SpeakPipe and speak highly of it, to pardon the pun. I think that the difference between us and SpeakPipe, and I think maybe there's one or two others that do something similar, is that we focus on a multi-turn conversation essentially. I think maybe they've updated their platform, so I don't want to say anything wrong. But from what I understand, SpeakPipe is an audio Dropbox where you put one question and then the guest can record as much as they like in a single go.
Right. They haven't changed.
They haven't changed. Okay.
No.
So Rumble takes that a step further, where you can break that interaction with the guest into multiple questions, essentially. So the first few questions can really be warm-up questions. It can be about, who are you and these kinds of things, get them comfortable with recording their voice, and then you can go into more depth. The vision for Rumble Studio, and this is actually what we're building right now with our data scientists and the AI side of Rumble, which is not released yet, but I can tell you a bit about it, is to actually listen to what the guest says. Listen to what the guest says in their first answer, and then dynamically generate in real time a follow-up question based on what they said to actually bring it closer to a live conversational interaction. And this is the bit that I'm most excited about, and that comes from the voice interface world.
That is, because when I do these podcasts, and I usually tell people up front, I like to make these light-hearted as much as possible and have fun with it. But also, as I'm asking questions and I'm getting the responses back from my interviewees, I'll spin off and ask a question based upon what he or she may have said that I just didn't think about.
Totally.
And so now you with Rumble Studio, you're introducing that as an AI feature. I think that's fantastic.
That's it, yeah. And to be honest, once we've built that technology that can be used in a completely automated setting, in an asynchronous setting, we could, in theory, bring that technology to live interviews as well, to support podcasters running live interviews, because there's no reason why that technology couldn't listen to what your guest says live and then just propose new follow-up questions on the screen that you could choose to ask or not, right? It could be a kind of decision support tool for a live podcaster.
Definitely see some use cases for that. Carl, you talk about democratizing audio. What does that mean?
Democratizing audio. Well, there's still a big barrier to entry, I feel, in producing audio content for a lot of people, individuals and companies. Not necessarily producing your first podcast episode. If quality isn't really an issue, it's easy just to pick up a mic and record your voice, right? But one of the big problems with podcasting is that you don't realize the benefits of podcasting, certainly for businesses, until you've released, a significant amount of episodes. You can't expect to release, 3 episodes and then for your sales to increase 100% or anything. You need to do it consistently, regularly, and over the long term. And audio production these days is still a time-consuming activity, and that either puts people off from starting or it makes people quit soon after they start. And there's a term that I'm sure you've heard of called pod fade,
Right.
which basically means, people who start with all the enthusiasm of a new podcaster, after about 7 to 10 episodes, I think is the average, realize, this is actually quite a lot of work and I'm not seeing any immediate benefits from it. Therefore, I'm just going to put it on the back burner and come back to it later. And then their podcast, basically dies. Sometimes that happens gradually, which is why it's called pod fade. They're releasing once a week, then they release once every 2 weeks, and it's once a month, and then one day they just stop releasing. And it's a shame. This is it's a real problem. And so democratizing audio content creation basically means to make it 10 times faster, easier, and cheaper to produce audio content so that more people can get involved. And also people who do get involved continue to do it over the long term. I think those are 2 important challenges that we should tackle in the audio world. And that's what Rumble Studio has really been built to achieve.
And there's another company called Descript. I'm sure you've heard of them. And they moved or are trying to move forward, as far as I can tell, with making podcasting easier.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of people ask me to assist them in doing a podcast, because I'm not afraid of audio at all, especially doing videography work. Your images can be kind of weak and soft, but your audio better be on point. Programs and companies like Descript, and I've used them before just because I like to test these things out before I start talking about them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I liked where they were going with it. And one of the other reasons I'm liking Rumble Studio, because it has some similar features, but it's different.
Yeah.
If that's a right way of saying it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Now with Rumble Studio, I read somewhere that you could do a recording, but if your voice doesn't sound great on the microphone, you can have an AI voice. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. Which links into Descript as well, right? Because they have their fantastic overdub feature.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm really excited about synthetic voices, and I have to say, really inspired by Descript. It's one of the big inspirations for creating Rumble, to see what those guys are doing in terms of the quality of the transcriptions, the editing from the text, editing audio using the text, and then the overdub that can actually replace words with your own voice clone. So cool. So I hope Rumble Studio can be one day as impressive as Descript is. But yeah, in terms of the TTS, there's a lot of advantage, I think, to being able to offer full synthetic audio, not just replacing individual words, but actually just allowing one of the participants in the conversation to speak with a synthetic voice throughout. There's advantages in that a lot of people don't have the right equipment to record good quality audio. They don't have the budget to buy it. They don't have the skills to be able to set it up or use it correctly. Often they don't have the right voice. Maybe they don't sound great on the mic. They don't want to learn to become a great speaker. They don't have the right accent, etc. There's also accessibility issues. So like not everyone is a native speaker of English, for example, but they want to put content out in English. There's lots of reasons why you might want to synthesize your voice. You might not even be able to speak. You might be deaf or have some kind of speech problems, and that synthetic speech can help with that as well. So I was really excited to include those features into Rumble. They're not released yet, but they are coming, where you can certainly write the questions for your guests and then generate the speech audio from that written text. And then perhaps one day the guests can do the same. They can actually submit their answers in text and generate speech in that way. We're seeing more and more companies creating their own branded voices, because having a synthetic voice for a company is advantageous because they're not reliant on a single voice actor. So that voice actor can often leave or do something embarrassing for the company, which means they have to change it. Working with celebrities is a risk, right? As we've seen, not all celebrities behave themselves in public. And so having a synthetic voice that you own is that the brand owns and uses across all their channels, in the podcast, on videos, in their adverts, everything.
Because I wanted to talk about, one of the things that you can do with Descript with the overdubbing is having your own voice.
Oh yeah.
And there's a couple of voice actors that I follow on YouTube that sounded the alarm and saying, well, hey, somebody's hijacking my voice.
Yeah.
So, but what I read with Rumble Studio, I don't think you're overdubbing the person's voice. You're just using a synthetic voice. Is that correct?
Yeah, for now, the first thing we'll integrate, which is because it's the easiest, is to integrate some stock voices from various synthetic voice providers. And there are many of them these days. Many of these TTS providers focus on different niches or verticals. So some are very fast to generate and very cheap. Some are slower to generate the speech, but they're much higher fidelity voices. Some providers focus on the emotion. So there's one called Sonantic that can make voices that sound like they're crying or very scared. It's very dramatic. And they're used for video games, etc. Some focus on different languages, like trying to find a Flemish, a Flemish TTS is not so easy. There's a couple of providers of those. So, my vision for Rumble Studio is to be able to integrate with all of these different providers to provide our users with a range of different voices and styles that fits the content that they want to create on Rumble. And then later, voice cloning absolutely is on the roadmap, because there are a lot of companies now that will clone your voice, and that cloning process is getting faster because it requires less training data, and it's getting cheaper as a result. And so that's to use one of those voices. There's a 2-stage process. Step 1 is you have to train your voice with that provider. And then stage 2 would be you use it, you select it from within Rumble Studio to be able to generate the audio there. So we would, of course, start with the pre-trained voices and then move on to voice cloning at some point.
But I guess you would have to really take into consideration of how to protect one's voice.
Well, that's something that I think the industry needs to work on as a whole. I mean, it's especially for people who have a lot of public voice data out there, in the public domain. Any podcaster who's done, a few episodes, or any celebrity, it's trivial to be able to just extract their voice and train something on it. And in fact, we're working with some companies now. They've got a demo online who, they got like 100 different celebrity voices on there. They got Hulk Hogan, they got they got all sorts of people. And I don't think they asked permission from those. They got Woody Woodpecker, I don't think they've got the rights to use that. It sounds pretty good as well.
So before we get out of here, I was going to do a Woody Woodpecker, but
don't let me stop you.
I think I'll let that go. Before we get out of here, Carl, I think your life is interesting to me. It's so interesting, and I know I jump around with topics, but that's just what I do, because I don't like to be pigeonholed in anything.
Right.
But you talked about entrepreneurship, and I think you started 5 companies, or you were involved with 5 startups?
Maybe I've been involved in 5 startups. I've only started 3 at a push. I've done, I would say 3 startups myself, and then I've worked in one for 2 years, which was the chatbot one in Beijing. I'd say let's say 4.
One was I guess a classic fail.
Yeah. A slow death as well. It took 4 years for us to go through that, which was instructive. You learn a huge amount by doing. You can learn a lot more doing than reading about it. But
I've been there. Trust me.
Really.
So, is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't bring up, or something you want to talk about? It doesn't matter what it is.
About entrepreneurship.
Or anything entrepreneurship, voice technology, Rumble Studio, where you are.
Well, going back to the voice technology stuff then, which links in, is I think there's a lot of innovation now around audio in terms of interactive audio. So, we listen to, in fact, I don't know if maybe you saw the Netflix series Bandersnatch. Did you see that? Where you could choose your own route? Like, I don't know if you saw that one, but it was,
No.
a series on Netflix where it would, you'd watch some of the episode and then it would give you a decision. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And then you actually click on the screen, like what you want to do. And then it plays you the video for that.
And what was the name of that again? Because I have a Netflix account. I want to look that up.
Yeah, I think it's called Bandersnatch. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. If you type in Bander, Bander something, it'll probably pop up. But
okay.
Anyway, it's kind of interactive video, but there are also interactive audio experiences. So you can have a look at an interactive podcast made by BMW. So it's a branded podcast. It's got their brand on it, called Hypnopolis. I think it is Hypnopolis, and they've done 2 series, and the second one is interactive. So we were listening to that internally in Rumble, and it's the same kind of concept, but with audio. So it's a sci-fi series. It's got nothing to do with BMW, the content, other than their logo on the podcast. It sounds like a sci-fi film, and at various points it asks you, so what do you want to do? Do you want to like blow up the spaceship, or land and meet the aliens or something? And then the story continues, driven by you, the listener. So I think that's really cool, in terms of different ways that you can consume audio. We're seeing a lot of social audio apps coming out now, in the wake of Clubhouse, and just more and more variations on how we can actually listen to audio, whether it's community generated or generated by brands. So I think that's a great trend, and that's one that everyone should watch and get involved in as well. Like try it out and see if it works. Doesn't always work perfectly.
I'm not really sure about Clubhouse. I have a Clubhouse account. Mm-hmm. It took a while to get one.
Oh, really?
But I still haven't quite figured out where I would fit in with that.
Yeah. Well, Clubhouse, I agree. I tried it, and it had all the disadvantages that asynchronous audio looks to correct. Like, you had to be there all at the same time. The audio quality was really poor.
Right.
It was just, people talk about nonsense most of the time, or just like there was these long gaps in silence. I was like, this is terrible. Like, I'm just not enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay. You and I are on the same page then.
It suits some people, like if that's your thing, fine. But
yeah, I haven't quite given up on it yet. We'll see.
Yeah. But so I just wanted to complete that thought. So that's the interactive consumption I was talking about. Like the ability to consume audio in different ways. Oh, and the granddaddy of them all is really on-demand audio through smart speakers and voice interfaces, because these days we ask for content through Google or Alexa. We get the news, we get a podcast, we get music. That's all on-demand audio. And in some ways, it's interactive. And I think Spotify are building in more and more interactive features into that as well. There are interactive adverts now that will play you 10 seconds of the audio ad, ask you a question like, do you want to hear more? And if you say, yeah, sure, then it will play you the rest of the ad, right? Knowing that you are genuinely interested. So these things are coming out.
Don't forget Siri.
Don't forget Siri, yeah. I don't, but Siri is all privacy-based, isn't it? So I'm not sure if they're going to bombard you with ads, interactive or not. We'll have to see, but yeah. So there's the consumption, but then so the bit that I'm interested in as well is the interactive creation, and so and this is really kind of what Rumble Studio is that the ability to have a conversation with someone in an automated fashion and get them to contribute content, then which you record, and guide them through an interactive experience where that interaction, the whole interaction in itself, becomes content that other people listen to, and maybe even one day consume interactively as well. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
So I think these are cool trends, and ones that I get excited about because it involves the whole voice interface, conversational AI aspect as well.
Carl, I really enjoyed talking with you. We could probably talk for another 2 hours.
Definitely.
About this. But how can folks get in touch with you? How can they check out Rumble Studio?
Yeah, so if you want to go to rumble.studio, you can sign up for an account, jump on the wait list, and then I'll drop you an email, and we can have a quick chat, and I can give you access to the system. Right now, we're really keen to just get some feedback on the experience, and find out what use cases people have in mind for asynchronous audio, because for sure I haven't thought of them all. We can brainstorm here for as long as we want, but we're not going to come up with all the ideas that the community can. So I would love for people to get in touch with me and share their ideas like you have. And yeah, just go rumble.studio. You can sign up for the account, and we've also got a newsletter, rumble.studio/newsletter. So either of those things would be great.
Carl, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I wish you all the success in the world, and I am definitely going to check out Rumble Studio for myself.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Carl.
It's been great to come on. Thanks a lot, Daniel. Take care.
If you like this show, please subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting app. You can also leave me a message about this episode or suggest new content. Go to speakpipe.com/making sense of, or click on the link in the show notes and leave a brief audio message. That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.